he burnt one of the 18th Street dudes for some dope, not much, $40, $50, $60, and ran home. Dude happened to know where he stays. He goes and knocks on the door. His brother answered the door, unknowing what's going on. The dude shot his brother and killed him.
Wow.
I whipped out the thing, was getting ready to bust, and the police hit the corner. So I find this out later on.
Alright, welcome back. S.WigginsTV. It's me, Worldwide Wiggins. Back with some more dope content for y'all, man. Hey, check it out, man. I got a long requested interview cracking off today, man. You know what I'm saying? A lot of y'all that pay attention to the SoCal or LA content, you know what I'm saying? You very familiar with this brother, man. He's built himself a platform and he's done pretty well for himself, man. You know what I'm saying? So, he's here on S.WigginsTV. This is his first time. We're going to get into his history. And we gonna do it like that, man. Shout out to Baby Crazo for hooking it up. Welcome none other than 16 to Life, a.k.a. Chill, to the platform. What's the deal, man?
Oh, I'm just lounging, man. And first and foremost, thank you, Wiggins, for having me on your program and your platform and stuff. Thank you for reaching out to me. And shout out to everybody out there.
Oh, yeah, nah, for sure. Bad, though, man. Thank you for being available, man. So, chill, man. You got a lot of, you talk a lot about, what you've been through on your channel, man. But let's take it to the tip top, man. Like, where was you born, man?
Okay, so I was born and raised in a small town known as Banning, California. And it is located in Riverside County, and it's probably maybe about 25 minutes east of Palm Springs, and probably about 25 minutes west of Palm Springs, and maybe about 40 minutes east of San Bernardino, Riverside.
Okay, and in Banning, is it predominantly Hispanic or like what's over there?
Well, you know what? I mean, now that I'm older and I realize, to me, of course, growing up, because the majority of the people that I was around was black, so it seemed like it was more black people than it actually is, So now that I'm older and know a little bit more about geographics and all that type of stuff, I would say probably nowadays it's probably more. Probably whites is probably the dominant race. You have a good number of Hispanics there, but probably white is still the dominant race there.
Okay. And if you don't, I know a lot of people don't really like covering this particular topic, but what hood is you from out there in that area?
Okay, so I want to say like maybe about 87, 86, probably 87. Me and my homeboys, we was the founders of the first hood out there, which was Eastside Player Gangsta Crips. And then, but we always would kick it at what was known then as Eastside Park. So maybe a few years later, you had the younger generation of homies come through, and they switched the name pretty much to Eastside Park Gangsta Crips. So you may hear individuals from my area say both. The older generation, my generation, really Eastside Player Gangsta Crip. But I was out there pushing with the younger cats too, and so I'll say both, but mainly Eastside Park Gangsta Crip is what we known as now.
Okay, for sure. With that being said, since you already established that y'all was, pretty much the first, lokes out there, who would you say was the biggest enemy? Was it the Bannon Thrashe or the Ruthless Bloods or P-Mob?
Well, like I said, around that time, the only other gang out there you can say was the Sapos, the Bannon Sapos, and by Bannon being a small town, we basically grew up, and had a relationship with the majority of the Hispanics out there. From time to time, there may be little skirmishes or whatever, but that's so for the most part, we was the only black gang out there until later on. Then you had other dudes started, creating different gangs and stuff like that. But in my generation, for the most part, we didn't have any enemies per se. It may be whoever happened to come out there from, especially like when crack hit around 86, 87, you would have different individuals from bigger cities try to flock out there and things like that. But for the most part, we, just us in the South Side Sapos.
Okay, is the Savo still around?
Yeah, so now they got the East Side Sapos as well as the South Side Sapos. But now I think I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think now you may have the East Side Sapos pushing just as hard or harder than the South Side Sapos. But like I say, I'm not 100% sure about that. When I got out of prison, there was a couple of big known rappers who had relatively big names from the South Side or from the Sapo rapping, and that's crazy because the name escapes me right now. But if you give me a minute, it'll pop into my head, and both of them end up happening to go to prison on a couple of cases, I think, where they end up catching life.
Oh wow! Oh.
They was down with what's the dude's name? The crime family or whatever. But them names will come to me in a couple of minutes. So both those guys was doing like millions of views too, And I actually happened to go to school with the guy with his mother. His their sons were a little younger than me. The Melissa Montez was her name, and her sons were a little younger than me. But I went to school with the mother.
Okay, that's what's up. I just skipped over like a real important thing, like. You was one of the founders of when it was the East Side Player Gangsta Crips. So, like, kind of talk about the evolution of that, like how you decided, to put the C on it, like, like how it all came to be.
Well, to keep it 100, man, back in those days, the majority of individuals was just Crips, and then so we had and I'm missing a very important part right here. It may or may not be known to a lot of individuals. You had Tookie, who was out in Bannon, I believe in the late 60s. He was down there in a boys' home. And so, I've been procrastinating about interviewing some of my older homies who had interactions with Tookie. They had fights with him and all types of stuff, So he initially was down there working in that boys' home for I forget the name of the two dudes who owned the boys' home. So he had him down there and a lot of other well-known Crips who they mentioned on YouTube. And so I want to say the Crip influence was always out there in Bannon. Then you had older dudes, my older homies, my older uncles who had, my older uncle who had went to school out there in Compton for a while, and you had other individuals who came back also with the Crip influence. And so I believe, just through the older homies, that's how it was, passed down to us in terms of, wanting to be Crips.
Was you guys like on the player tip? Like how did the name come about?
Well, so it's crazy because originally we was calling ourselves the 8-Ball Posse. That's back when you had a lot of the word posse was being used around a lot. That's back when Sir Mix-a-Lot had my posses on Broadway. That's around the time when, I don't know if you're familiar with the Crips out there from Palm Springs, they was going by Gateway Posse. Yeah. And so we was calling ourselves the 8-Ball Posse. But then we heard Eazy-E say it on a song, so we was like, okay, well, no, we don't want to go with that. And so I remember one day specifically just being at the park, dudes kicking around certain ideas, what we was going to be called and stuff. And so I believe the homie CC, Deshaun McGinsey, rest in peace, he came up with the name Eastside Player Gangsta Crip. Now, maybe a few months ago on Facebook, one of my older homies, shout out to Keith Smith, he was saying that him and Deshaun came up with that name at his house. So he may have been the one who originated the name, so for whatever reason we settled on Eastside Player Gangsta Crips. Not necessarily that we was on some player stuff, but dudes was out there just hustling and getting money. So that may have been where the name originated. Through that.
Okay, for sure. No, I dig it. Transitioning, coming up banging, you gonna end up, a couple places, YA or the county jail.
Right.
How was that first experience for you, man? Hitting the county, man, banging up Port Gangster Crib.
So before I hit the county, I went to juvenile hall in '89, and so that was my first experience of being incarcerated. And so at that time, homie, it was a little rough, to keep it 100, because this is like '89, and then the hood, I want to say, originated in '87, somewhere around there, and the town is small, so you had a lot of individuals who had not heard of much less, they hadn't even heard of banning, much less
Right.
Eastside play
Right.
against the Crip or whatever. So when I got to the county jail, it was a little bit rough because I'm representing my set like everybody else, and so I'm a little individual at that time, especially. And so yeah, dudes had not heard of my hood, and I got a couple of those. I tell a cat where I'm from, never heard of it. That was a disrespectful thing they would say back then when you tell a cat where you from, and you okay, you ever heard of this? And I boop bop, and the squad was on. So it definitely, homie, was a tough experience. Like I say, being from an unknown hood, and being from an area that wasn't located anywhere close to Los Angeles.
Okay, nah, for sure. Now, see what you just said. Like, I didn't see it with my own eyes, bro. Like, people, no disrespect to you, chill, man. I know you solid, bro, but when people get put into that situation where they hood is not necessarily known as much, they get, quote unquote, turned out, or they choose to bang something else.
Right.
Um, I'm not gonna ask you if you considered it, but did you kind of see that, or like had homies that did that?
Oh yeah, yeah, and me personally, homie, I never considered it in my life because I was born and raised in Bannon, and I've always had pride in where I'm from, But that's not to say that I did not experience other homies. I have, and I won't necessarily maybe put their names out there, but I have homies who represent my hood now. When I can specifically remember them representing other hoods from LA, Los Angeles, or some cats have moved out there in the second and third grade, and they representing hoods from LA. And I'm thinking, you've been out here since '77. How's you from whoop de whoop and whoop de whoop? You've been out here all your life. You know what I'm saying? So no, it's definitely. It's definitely, homie, like I say, I like to keep it real. It is what it is. You definitely have some dudes who feel that they crippin' or they bloodin' is more validated if they're representing a well-known hood from Los Angeles. I remember, and the dude, he's not around now, and cold part about it is he ended up telling on me, and I've been knowing him all his life. But at one point in time, he was representing Hoover. Then later on, he switched to Blood. He was representing Swan and all that type of stuff. And you've been out here in Bannon your whole entire life, born and raised out here just like me. So I definitely have experienced that. Like I say, for whatever reason, individuals feel that if they claim a more popular hood, it will make them appear harder, downer, or whatever they think.
When I hear player Gangster Crips and I hear the '80s / '90s, assuming coming of age, who was some of the first neighborhood Crips that kind of tripped on the name? Like, oh, you Gangster Crip, huh?
Well, like I say, being out there, way out there in Bannon, we really didn't experience that, because that was also back in a time where cats would come out there, and to keep it 100, they probably wasn't looking at us as no super respectable Crips. And I remember one time, homie, some dude rolled down the street, and he was older, of course, old enough at the age to be driving, and we was probably 15, 16, and he was like, "What's up? Where y'all from?" And we young, we bang on him. He say, "Okay, as long as y'all Crips." So I say that to say that was back in the period too, where it was just more. You had more Crip love still floating around. You know what I'm saying? And so, Cause I remember some rolling 60s coming out there as well, and they never tripped on us about having gangster in our title. I do remember one time you had matter of fact, you had some A trays come out there, and uh, one of them was messing with some girl who happened to live in some apartments where my homeboy lived. Now my homeboy, like I say, we out there in Bandit, homie, so we not up on all the I want to say all the do's and don'ts that's going on in LA in terms of what hats and all this and that. So my homeboy, at back then we go to the store and we may just get a hat and just rock it specifically because it's blue with no other thoughts concerning the label on it. But my homie had on he had on a Seattle Mariners hat, of course, with the S on it, which represents 60s.
Yeah.
So the dude from A Trey, he see the homie come out with the hat on. He push up on him like, "Hey, what's up, cuz? Are you from 60s?" And my homie was like, "No." He's like, "Okay, yeah, man. Cause look, we don't like that hat right there. So what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take you to the store and let you pick out another hat. But you know what I'm saying? If you don't mind, man, get rid of that hat. We don't rock with that, or something along those lines.
Oh, okay.
So as long as we was out there cripping, the Crips who came out there was embracing us,
For sure. Well, with that being said, like, who's some of the red rags you kind of bump heads with initially? Respectfully.
Well, out there, homie, it was just
it ain't necessarily got to be in Bannon. It could be like when they transferred you like to different county jails and stuff. Like,
So when I went to, okay, so let me say this too. Initially, you did have some red rags who came out there, right? And a lot of times, some of those cats would make their way out there because they had lived out there when they was young, or they had some family, right? So when you'd have one or two come out there, for the most part, as long as they wasn't set tripping, the homies really wasn't tripping on them. You know what I'm saying? Because like you look at them like, oh, okay, man, them is Tamika's people, or them is Renisha's people, or whatever, So I remember it definitely being it was some 4, 5, 6 cats out there, and then later on at a time we started buying dope for them dudes. I remember one time going to Pomona, to get some work from one of them cats, and this dude was moving, and he had his homies, helping him move, and it was a gang of them dudes over there, but they wasn't really tripping and stuff like that. So some of them cats came out there, and then going to Riverside, when I was locked up in Riverside, for the most part, I was in the Crip tank. You know what I'm saying? So I'm still at that point just all around Crips. So you may have some words with individuals when we go to court and stuff like that, but not necessarily one particular hood who was like, okay, when we see them dudes, it's on and cracking, because I don't know if anybody is familiar with those times back then, but back then it was pretty much like, it was red versus blue. You know what I'm saying? For the most part,
right. Okay. Do you remember like at what point did the 18th Street set up shop in like Bannon?
And so that I don't even remember running across none of them. Right? I think that was something, because I got locked up in '94. So in '89, though, once I graduated from high school, by this time I'm already selling dope. So I happened to go out to Billings, Montana. I had some cousins who lived out there, and I'm going out there to visit, but I ended up staying out there. So I stayed out there to the point where I eventually, my cars had Billings, Montana tags on them. The police pulled me over a couple of times. Eventually they said, okay, man, you've been out here, you ain't visiting no more as far as we concerned. So now you got to go get a ID out here, and so on and so forth. So that's how long I was actually living out there. So I would come out to Cali to get some work and this and that. So for the most part, that's where I have been since '89. So whatever was going on in terms of stuff like that, I would miss that. I'd slide out Bannon, hang out for a week, get my work, then I'm right back out there. So I never encountered any of the 18th Streets, though. One of my older homies, his brother was killed by 18th Street.
Really?
Yeah. And so the story goes, and I'm not necessarily going to put the homie out there. And I was locked up with him. He was a lifer, and he's free now. But the story goes, at the time, he's he down bad. He's smoking drugs, and so he burnt one of the 18th Street dudes for some dope. Not much, $40, $50, $60, and ran home. Dude happened to know where he stays. He goes and knocks on the door, and him and his brother look very similar. So when his brother answered the door, unknowing what's going on, the dude shot his brother and killed him.
Wow. Yikes.
Yeah.
Damn. Well, condolences go out to his family, man. I know, yeah, man.
I appreciate it.
All right. So let's switch gears a little bit. So you went to the pen in the early '90s, man. Can you?
Right. About mid 90s. I was charged with my initial case in 93. I went on the run for a year. So when they catch me in 94, I'm on the run for those 3 attempted murders, and then they also charged me with another murder. So I sat in the county jail, and I fought those cases for about 2 years. So I hit the pen in July of 96. I got to the reception center in 96, and I hit Salinas in August of 96. So mid 90s.
All right, we gonna touch on that in a second, bro. But can you talk about, like, if you can, I'm pretty sure you didn't. You can, what I'm saying, but just to be on the safe side, like, how did you end up catching them cases? Like, what was the situations?
So okay. So at the time of the first initial situation, right? I'm living in Montana. I'm out there selling dope, man. It's lovely out there in terms of the profit that a dude can make. I'd come down here, I'd get ounces and stuff. If I got 18 or better, I was getting them for $300 a piece. I'd take them back out there. I could sell one for $2,000. I could break it down and make a little more. So so I'm out there, and I happen to run out of dope. My homie called me. He knew somebody that wanted an ounce. So I give him the ounce for $2,000. He called me back about 3 hours later. They want another one, except they $250 shot. They got $1,800. So I take the 3.5 grams out, minus out that, and give it to him for that. So then I'm pretty much out of dope. So my girlfriend my girl on the side. My girlfriend at the time called me saying she hears my girl on the side is pregnant, and so she come over to the house tripping. I hide in the closet on her, I'm saying. She snatched some of the bread I had on the bed. I said, and so, because I'd already been contemplating about coming back to Cali and getting some more work, but when she came over there and pulled that little stunt, I said, yeah, I'm out of here. I deal with this mess when I come back. So I come down to Cali to get some work. I'm at a house party, homie. Me and my homie, we had a house party, and so now one of my partners, right, I've been knowing him all his life. He rests in peace now, my partner OZ. My father and his grandfather was good friends. So, he's back and forth between Bannon, San Bernardino, and Los Angeles. So a lot of his people was red rag. So around the banging age, he started claiming red rag, was stealing all. This is my homie. So he was actually the second dude I took out of state to Montana. So me and him, we had a party, and one of the damus who had been out there, they greet each other, how it was, or anybody who know how it was back in the 80s, homie. That's when the Bloods really had the blood love, and they really was united and stuff. So they got that, they had that little bond going on, right? But now, earlier, one of my homies had got into it with this dude's cousin, and I whipped out the thing, was getting ready to bust, and the police hit the corner. So I find this out later on when I get all the transcripts. So the dude, he was angry about me pulling that pistol out, right? And so he approached me, the dude tried to fire on me. I seen, getting ready to throw the punch. I cocked back, and I whipped the thing out, and I started busting, So in that incident, his brother gets shot in the head. three other dudes get shot, and so
Mm.
my name come up in the shooting. They go to telling and all that old type of stuff, and so I go on the run, and so that's how I end up getting caught up in that initial situation. So at some point now at some point in time, okay, so the dude who was with me, my homie OZ, now like I say, he a Damu, the dude who approaches a Damu, but when the dude approaches and try to get off on me, the homie OZ get off on him. And so, long story short, me and OZ is charged with the shooting. We names in the paper, we go on the run. So they crack OZ. When they crack OZ, he stay in about 3 or 4 months. He fight it. They come forward, the other Damus, and they come forward and say OZ wasn't shooting. I'm the one that's doing the shooting. So, OZ get out. He give me the paperwork or whatever. And so when the police catch me in '94, the dude who was cooperating, the Damu cat who started it all, he had lost his life, and so I was also being charged with that murder in terms of basically eliminating a witness. So now I got the 3 attempted murders plus his murder right there. So that's how I got caught up in all that stuff right there.
Oh man, at that moment, bro, fighting that case, what was they even trying to offer you, like off the dribble?
Well, you know how that go. They play hardball and blah blah blah. And then at one point, homie, my lawyer told me he believed he could have got me something in the low 20s. Now, that was my first time being in any major trouble, right? And so at that point, they don't got none of the guns and none of the shootings. I'm young. I'm my crippin' is turned up. You know what I'm saying? I'm thinking that I made the mistake of thinking that everybody was gonna keep it gangster and keep it in the street. You know what I'm saying? You know how shit go.
Yeah.
Cats telling you can get word out. Hey man, tell that boy don't come to court and all that old type of stuff. And dudes saying they ain't gonna come to court, and lo and behold, they go to showing up. Like I was talking about the cat earlier who was claiming A. Trey Hoover, and then later on he started claiming Mad Swan Blood. This dude was the main witness. I've been knowing this dude all my life. You know what I'm saying? And so he come to court and all that old type of stuff. So so yeah, I think initially at some point in time, I think they was offering me, I think my lawyer said like 23. I could have got 16 for the murder, 7 for the attempted murder. That was back when you could have got half. So 23, I would have done whatever half of that is, and I would have been out in 11, 12 years. But I'm young. I'm thinking they ain't got no case. I ain't trying to go do 11 some years. When you 21, 22, 11 years, that seemed like forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I took it to trial on my first case and lost. I got life on my first case. I got 9 years for the dude who got hit in the head. I was found guilty of great bodily injury. For the dude who they say I was attempting to shoot and didn't even get hit, I was found guilty of a premeditated murder, and I got the life on the dude who wasn't even hit whatsoever. And so that's how I ended up with 9 years plus life. Then I stayed in the county jail maybe another year, and eventually I ended up getting another lawyer, and he got me a deal for 16. They dropped the murder down to voluntary manslaughter, and they gave me 16 years, and they ran the 16 and the 9 together, but they ran it bow-legged or consecutive to the life. So basically, instead of 9 plus life, I had 16 plus life. So I had to do the 16 first, then start doing the life sentence.
And that was a paid lawyer because you was getting money.
Both of my lawyers was paid lawyers. Now, my first lawyer was a dude by the name of Julian Fox. Now, while I'm locked up in jail, like I said, I had never been in any major trouble before. So my pops hired this dude. Come to find out, he hired this dude out of the green sheet because he liked his slogan, slick as a fox, and something like that. But come to find out, I was his very first attempted murder case and his second case, period. This dude was a new lawyer, scared, square old dude, and so this dude was horrible, man. Wouldn't speak up. He was scared, little short, ugly cat. And so initially, the DA has my father down as a witness because when they raided his house, they found a shotgun box, and they was trying to say that shotgun, the shotgun that was used in the murder, that was the box for the shotgun. So until they called him in as a witness, they wasn't gonna let him, they didn't let him in the courtroom. So my father, the lawyer is telling my father, hey man, Chill is messing with me. He's bugging me while I'm trying to work. So my pops is saying, hey man, leave the dude alone, let the dude work. But then once my pops got in there, my pops seen how scared and timid and stuff this dude was. So once he once I got found guilty on that one, then I went on to hire another lawyer up out of San Bernardino who was real good black dude by the name of Grover Porter. And he said, had I came to him initially, he felt that he could have beat all that stuff. But at that time, when I go hire him, I've already got a life sentence. And so he's the one that ended up getting me the deal for 16 years and all that old type of stuff. And so, yeah, that's how that turned out.
Okay, okay. So, how did they end up like dropping the life sentence? Was it like the 25 thing, or what was it?
No, you talking about how did I end up getting out?
Yeah, how you end up getting out? Yeah.
So yeah, no.
Now you know I gotta keep you coming back for more, man. Stay tuned. Part 2 dropping tomorrow. Hey, this one was hard. Wicked.